would like to introduce a friend of mine. Jefferson Holland celebrates the history and culture of the Chesapeake Bay through articles published in regional newspapers and magazines, as well as in the original songs and poetry he shares in live performances and recordings. Sidebar, he is one of the co-founding members of the Eastport Oyster Boys, which you may or may not have seen in and around the MRE down south there, along with Kevin Brooks, and our executive director is also that gang. Yeah, small world, who knew? And Jeff has served as the director of the Annapolis Maritime Museum, as well as a riverkeeper for the West and Road Rivers. He lives in Annapolis with his emotional support spouse, Louise White, and their new rescue, Elabra something or other, Millie. Tonight, Jeff will share his top 10 trails around the Severn River and beyond from his newspaper column that appears every other Sunday in our hometown paper, the Annapolis Capital. So with that, I would like to introduce the non-video version of Jefferson Holland, but his PowerPoint is up and ready to go.
Brian, you mean nobody's going to see me? I mean,
Nope.
I shaved my beard for nothing? Oh, man.
All right, I'm muting. Take it away, sir.
Okay. Well, good to see everybody. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I'm happy to share some walking trails with you all. This is my me and my beautiful bride of 37 years as of tomorrow, Louise White. So this is actually walking along Deer Creek in Harford County, but we're going to concentrate on Anne Arundel County, and mainly we're going to start at the top of the Severn River, wander all around the county, and wind up at the end of the Severn River, both times with our wonderful Tom Gay. Happy Trails to You came from a memo that somebody sent saying, gee, are you gonna put a compilation of all of your happy trails in a book? And I thought, Happy Trails, that's beautiful, that's a wonderful title. And so this is all about happy trails. So we'll start at Severn Run at the very top of the Severn River. This is Tom Gay inspecting his river at the very, this is as far as you can get up north on the end of the Severn River without running aground in your boat. So this is the Severn Run Natural Environmental Area, which is a wonderful site with a very disappointing name. The site indeed encompasses the watershed of the Severn Run, the headwaters of the Severn River. It has remarkably retained its natural character thanks to the aegis of the Maryland Park Service. And it's certainly environmental, as Tom Gay would attest to. But, and it covers more than 1,400 acres of area, but just the name is not poetic, it just doesn't sing. So here it is. This is what I'm going to do is show you a Google map of the area, and this is Annapolis, and this is where Severn Run is. So in each of these sites, I'll kind of show you where the general area is, and then we'll go into a more detailed map. This is an app that I use frequently. This is All Trails, and you can download it for free, and it shows you the exact, well, most of the time, the pretty exact track of each trail, gives you directions to the railhead, and then also tracks you along the way so you can discover where you are as you run the route. And it also shows you kind of the topography of the trails, so you can see how challenging it might be for people who might have trouble getting up and down hills. Let's see, Severn Run starts, there are two different entrances. One is near the end of Indian Landing Road, just before you get to Arlington Echo, and that goes about a mile up to the mouth of the head of the Severn River. And then there's another mile run that goes along the run, and this is accessible through a site off of Veterans Highway that I'll show you in a minute. So this is an app you can download for free, All Trails, and it's a good one. Another one I use frequently is GIA or GIA, I don't know, I call it GIA, GPS. It's also free, although there is a more professional version of it that you can buy into. But this actually gives you the topographical charts and maps of the area they're going for. So you can actually see the contours of the site. Doesn't always show the exact route of the trails, but it will show you exactly where you are in any given spot. And it's really a wonderful tool to use. So between All Trails and GI, UPS, GPS, you can pretty much find your way around any place. And it's not just this area, it's good all over America and probably all over the globe. This is an example of a really pristine freshwater rill or streamlet in the area. This is Sewell Spring Branch, and it's named after a Methodist preacher named John Sewell, who hosted meetings of the Methodist Society in his nearby home in 1777. And this was years before the Methodist Episcopal Church was founded in 1784. So Sewell's home, which is called Brooksby's Point, is still standing and still privately owned. It's just upstream of this spot, on the outer limits of the natural area. And Bishop Francis Asbury himself preached there several times. So here is a pristine tributary to that part of the Severn River. But Tom and I were looking for the polluted part because in his water quality monitoring, he noticed that as far up as he could get in the end of the Severn River in a boat before he ran aground, the water was always the worst there than any other spot in the river. So there must be some cause to make that effect. So we were out there searching. You can see here's men on a mission. And we found it. This is beyond the area where you can actually get a boat up. You can get a canoe or a kayak up in here, but not a motorboat. And Tom is looking at the very polluted stream that we assume is from the stormwater runoff from I-97 and Route 32 that wasn't properly mitigated by the Maryland Highway Administration when they built those structures. So Tom has some work to do in order to jump up and down on the Highway Administration to make them fix this problem. Here is another site called the Patuxent Refuge, and this is a pretty amazing place. This is 12,841 acres of wilderness tucked in between Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, just south of Fort Meade. The Patuxent Refuge was established in 1936 by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Now, there are 555 of these refuges among the 50 states managed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, but this is the only one dedicated to wildlife research. And this territory covers the bits of the Patuxent River and the Little Patuxent River watersheds. And here it is. Here is Annapolis, and it's way over here. This is Fort Meade, and Bowie is around here, and Jessup is up in here. But it's a little far away, but it's just an amazing place to visit. And here is the part of the trails in one of the 3 sections of the research center. There are 3. The North Track, this is the North Track, which offers hunting, fishing, wildlife observation, trails, and interpretive programs. The Central Tract, where the U.S. Geological Society geological survey biologists conduct much of their work on the Patuxent Wildlife Research Center, and the South Tract, where the National Wildlife Visitor Center is located and where those trails are located. The National Wildlife Visitor Center in the North Tract are the only areas open to visitors. And while the Visitor Center is closed during this coronavirus pandemonium, the trails are still open to the public every day except for federal holidays. Now, the North Tract is the most recent addition to the refuge, and it's entirely tucked into the western corner of Anne Arundel County between Fort Meade and Route 197. In this section, just this 1/3 of this tract This section covers more than 8,000 acres of upland hardwood forest, meadow, and marsh. So it's this part plain of the Patuxent River, and it's so low to the water that many of the trails are lifted up onto these boardwalks. Here's a couple jogging. Here's some of the beautiful freshwater vernal pools that you'll find with incredible wildlife. Here is me walking along one of those boardwalks. And here is the section of the Patuxent River that is very alluring, just a beautiful place. And here, I just love the people I meet on these excursions. This little girl, 3-year-old girl from Annapolis, was on this log, and I asked her, "What are you doing?" She said, "Well, I'm riding my baby elephant." And she was just having a great time, and her mom and then the little baby was just glaring at me. He's like, "What are you doing here? Where'd you come from?" So I have a lot of fun meeting people that wouldn't normally meet. This is again on the Patuxent River, and this is only 1/3, a small part of the Jug Bay Wetland Sanctuary. This is the Glendenning Nature Preserve, and what we're looking at is a boardwalk that runs from the bank of the woods all the way across this marsh. It must be at least 100 yards out to the edge of a creek, and the river itself is on the other side of this marsh along the edge of this tree line. The Patuxent River here is just astonishing. It is an amazing place of history and nature. This section of the Patuxent River is still tidal. The Patuxent River is the longest river within the boundaries of the state of Maryland, and it goes from all the way up near Ellicott City all the way down to Solomon's Island. And this section used to be an ocean-going level depth, but it has silted up over time from agriculture and the deforestation of our forests. So this particular area covers about 1,700 acres of tidal and freshwater marshes, forests, creeks, and meadows, pine barrens, and fields along the Patuxent River. Since Jug Bay was established in 1985, it secured its stature as one of the most spectacular natural sites in the realm of the Anne Arundel County Department of Recreation and Parks. So the other sites within the Jug Bay Sanctuary system are the actual sanctuary itself, which is just south of this point, the Patuxent Wetlands Park, and the Nature Preserve at Wason's Corner. And in the sanctuary, you'll find an excellent visitor center at the end of Triton Road. For that part of the park, there is an admission fee of $6 per vehicle, but pets are not permitted. So we chose to ramble around the Glendenning Preserve, where there's no admission and dogs on leashes are welcome. So there are 2 entrances to this section of the park. The southernmost is on Triton Road. So again, here is Jug Bay at the kind of the south western portion of Anne Arundel County. And the Jug Bay Wetland Sanctuary is down on this side of Triton Road, and this is the Glendenning Nature Preserve. So this marks the trail that you can wander around, but there are several connecting trails, so you can make it just an endless loop. And that boardwalk was right along here that went into that creek and then along the river. So there's one entrance here along, along Plummer Lane as it meets Maryland Route 4, and then the main entrance, which is here off of Triton Road. Now, here is the curious thing. I have to tell you about the dogs in our lives. We had a beautiful Irish setter whom you'll meet in a minute. named Bonnie. And Bonnie was my wonderful companion for many of these trips. And then she passed away about this time last year. So since then, I've been gotten special training from the SPCA of Anne Arundel County, the station in Eastport off of Bay Ridge Road, so that I can take some of their dogs out for a date. And this is one of them. This is Athena. Athena, she really was a god. She had a nose that you wouldn't believe. She would lunge at every single tree and every single rock and every single protrusion and sniff and sniff and sniff and sniff. So we were having a little discussion here saying, can't you, maybe sniff every other tree or every third tree? And finally she settled down a little bit. There's a lot of archaeology going on here. When I told one of the county archaeologists about it, he said, oh, well, we've been working there a lot, so he's probably sniffing all of those archaeologists. Here's where some of that archaeology is taking place. This is an area called Pig Point, which is between the Glendenning site and the Jug Bay Sanctuary. And this is a farm where our county archaeologists from the Lost Towns Project have been studying this site since 2009. And they've discovered evidence of thousands of people living here for thousands of years. And they've uncovered no fewer than 14 sites within a mile of this original Pig Point site. They've been unearthing arrowheads and projectile points and burial sites and things that date back 6,500 years or longer. It's just astonishing. And when you look at places like this, you can see why people enjoyed living here, because the places that they've chosen to stay are still beautiful places overlooking the rivers with plenty of geese and ducks and waterfowl and fish and oysters and other things to feast on. It must have been a real paradise at some point. And this is me and Athena. So this is how I got my doggy fix for almost a year. So I'd also like to take you to one of my favorite places on Earth, the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center. And they have a number of trails that they're in the process of renovating. The one that is open now is the one that takes you to Hog Island. Cirque is an astonishing place. It's just 10 miles south of Annapolis. It covers 2,650 acres of forest, field, and marsh, nestled along 15 miles of shoreline of the West and the Road River, down between Edgewater, Galesville, and Shadyside. It was founded in 1965, and some of the scientists' study on water quality, land use, and global warming have been ongoing since that time. And on top of providing long-term, cutting-edge ecological research on the issues impacting anywhere on Earth where land meets water, Cirque also offers public education programs and access to trails that crisscross the landscape and the bayscape. The Cirque is located on Conte's Wharf Road off of Muddy Creek Road. And to get there, you're welcome to be there Monday through Saturday, 8:30 to 4:30. You need to check in at the gate with the guard at the gate, so you need to bring along a photo ID, which you might need. And the place to start is at the Reed Education Center, which is at the end of Dock Road. So the trail leads along the creek. This is the Road River, and this is Fox Creek. It's a little rivulet back here. This is Fox Point, and it runs kind of over this point and onto this island, which is not really an island. It's set apart from the mainland by a marsh on one side and by Muddy Creek on the other, and yet it's a totally different world. There are mountain laurels and oak trees and things that you wouldn't find in other parts of the very nearby forest. And in a very mysterious spot, I met this young woman and her son and we were admiring that somebody, some mysterious elf, had made this beautiful mandala out of fall leaves in the trail just for people like us to find it. It's just magical. So I wondered why Hog Island is called Hog Island, since it's not really an island, and it's not a place where you think you could leave hogs to grow. And so on my way back, I studied this picture, and this is Hog Island back here, and I realized the shape of these trees looks like a sleeping hog in a farmyard. And I think that's how it got its name. It's just an astonishing place to be, and definitely worth the visit. It's absolutely open for free, and you should go. You can also arrange a guided tour. I'm training to be a docent at the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center, and we will be giving guided tours as soon as the pandemonium eases up. Now, one of the things I wanted to try was walking in the rain. I hadn't done that for quite a while, and one of the places I chose it was, again, one of my favorite places. This is Beverly Triton Nature Park at the end of the Mayo Peninsula. Here, here its location, and this is my house, and it's only 2.5 miles by kayak, but it's about 10 miles around by car. This is the site, and these are the trails. The trail goes around a saltwater pond that is an absolutely pristine, and then you get to walk along the beach here. This section of the park was actually purchased by the county a number of years ago, but then kind of leased to the Beverly Beach community, and the county has since taken it back. So you actually really can walk further down this stretch if you care to. As you notice, the contour is relatively flat since it's right on the banks of the West River, and not a lot of topography here, but it's certainly a beautiful spot. Now, historically, Beverly Beach and Triton Beach were restricted white beaches in the days of Jim Crow, and up until not all that long ago. So here is a sign from the entrance to Beverly Beach. Notice it says Gentiles only, and I've heard from Facebook discussion that also included Greeks and not of course black people. We wouldn't have black people there, and then Italians couldn't be there. So, but what offends me the most is, look, no dogs. Ugh. So I think it's time that we change the name of Beverly Triton Beach. It's just time. I don't care about cancel culture. We don't want to reflect times when we were restricting entrance to places like this. We don't do that anymore. So again, here is me in my rain getup and walking along the planks of the lowlands that have been conveniently placed here. I do want to caution you, though, that I've learned from feedback on this particular hike that it's really rude to walk on mud trails in the rain, because you just leave gouging footprints, and when the rain wash goes away and the mud dries, it just leaves an impenetrable track that is awkward for both bicyclists and people. So I was careful to not walk in the mud when I was doing this, but just want to caution you. There are miles and miles and miles of paved trails around the county that you can enjoy without getting muddy in the rain. Here's another fellow rain walker, and her retriever didn't mind. He was having a great time. So here's along the beach. This is the West River, and this is Curtis Point, the mouth of the West River. Galesville's down that way, and the Eastern Shore is over here beyond the fog. So this is some sand sculpture that somebody made and left there. And that's me walking on the beach. So another spot, oh, incidentally, let me talk about Beverly Beach. This is one of those places that is a real victory of access over development. In the 1980s, there was a plan to build more than 2,000 luxury units, but that went bust when the developer couldn't get the county to provide sewer service. So in 1985, under the leadership of County Executive James O. Lighthouser and Council President Virginia Claggett, the county procured $3.2 million in program open space funding to buy the property. So at the time, Lighthouser focused the county's resources on developing Quiet Waters Park in Annapolis and let Beverly Triton go fallow. So it was just sitting there for 20 years and has only recently been reopened to the public. There's more than 340 acres of open holly forest surrounding 3 large tidal ponds, and it's definitely worth a visit. Here is another wonderful dog named Max that I borrowed from the Spca, and Max was who I want to be when I grow up. He was just so calm, so collected, and he was just so much fun to be around. This is the Bacon Ridge Natural Area, and it's up at the headwaters of the South River. So it's way up here. It's really kind of odd to find. You have to go up, I'll give you directions, but you actually cross over I-97 on Hawkins Road, and you can find the trailhead to Bacon Ridge. Now this area is 630 acres of permanently protected land. There was a conservation easement between Anne Arundel County, the Maryland Environmental Trust, and the Scenic Rivers Land Trust, whom I think are real heroes. It's part of a larger tract that comprises more than 900 acres of marshes and mature forests, nestled between I-97 and Route 450. The creek called Bacon Ridge Branch flows into the headwaters of the South River. Now, this property is owned by Anne Arundel County and managed by the county's Department of Recreation and Parks. And since 210, the core 630 acres of the natural area has been open to the public. The trails here and the trails at Waterworks Park were created by an all-volunteer effort by the owner-employees of Trailworks Cyclery in Millersville and an organization called the Mid-Atlantic Off-Road Enthusiasts, or MORE, M-O-R-E. And MORE is a premier mountaineering, biking, and trail building advocacy club in the Mid-Atlantic region. And MORE's mission is to build an inclusive mountain biking community and to increase access to natural surface trails throughout the region for all riders. But they welcome us walkers and hikers too. Now, I spoke with one of the key volunteers from MORE, and he estimates that his group has contributed more than $500,000 in expertise and labor in building trails and maintaining them in several different places around our county alone. And their one request is that we do not use these trails when they're muddy. The footprints, again, churn up the mud, and when it dries like that, it creates a hazard for cyclists and hikers alike. So the beauty of Bacon Ridge is that it covers, there are 2 main loops. There's a central one here, which I've done twice, and I haven't been up to the farthest one here, but it's all just beautiful area. There's some steep topography, but it's a beautiful, mature hardwood forest and lots of birds and lots of wonderful sights to see. So here's Max and me enjoying our hike. One of the curious things is that there's, before you get to the end, there's an old junkyard of 5 or 6 old cars that have been there for so long that the tulip poplar trees have grown so that they crush the cars in between the trunks. And somebody actually identified what this vehicle is. And I thought maybe it was a 1952 Nash or something like that. I can't remember, but it's somebody knows, somebody out there, maybe somebody here in the audience knows what these cars are. But it's not so much a junkyard anymore. It's more like a environmental sculpture. It's just actually astonishing find to trip across. And there's me and Max. We had a great time. Now here's Waterworks Park. And my friend Dave Isbell, whom you see here, and this is our dear departed Irish setter Bonnie, who was with us at the time. And Dave told me about this trail, and I was eager to investigate. It's hard to believe that there are 600 acres of dense hardwood forest in the area tucked between Generals Highway and Veterans Defense Highway. And I met Dave at the trailhead at Housley Road. This is just across from where the Best Buy and the Safeway and the new Dick's is located. There's a large Stone Point apartment complex there. And there's a space along Housley Road for about a dozen or so cars to park. There's no admission, but there's actually, believe it or not, the guys who to maintain these trails put up a stoplight on one of the trees as you enter the park, and it tells you if it's too wet to try the trail or if it's safe and dry enough to use the trail. So they're getting really sophisticated in their advocacy for protecting the trails. So this is owned by the City of Annapolis Recreation Parks Department, and it starts out in a deep gully at the headwaters of Broad Creek and winds through a forest of oak and holly and mixed yellow poplars and beech trees. And one loop takes you across a little footbridge over the outfall to the dam at Waterworks Park and up around the 80-acre field of solar panels that covers the old capped Annapolis landfill. And from there, it goes all the way up to Honeysuckle Lane. And from there, you're going to go even further to connect with Bacon Ridge Trails in Crownsville. So the Waterworks Park, the actual Waterworks Park off of Defense Highway, is a restricted park, and the parking is restricted there. For now, I'm advocating with the mayor to open up at least some of that parking for just people who are using the trails. In the meantime, if you want to use that restricted section of the park, you can get a permit at the Pitt Moyer Recreation Center on Hilltop Lane. But you can fish there. Oh, here's the, this is the Housley Road entrance. And there's actually about a 2-mile loop that is a wonderful couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours of walking. And this is the extension all the way over to the actual Waterworks Park. Here's the reservoir, and here's the parking area. That's approachable from Defense Highway here. And that other extension of the trail goes up along the reservoir and beyond. So this is Mahoney, and we took a walk along the reservoir another time. The park, the actual waterworks, this is the original reservoir that dates back to 1866. And at that time, this is the first way that the city of Annapolis got water. It was pumped through innovative concrete pipes about 3 miles to the city. It was mainly used for fire suppression rather than drinking. So this is the trail up the hill to the solar panel area. And this is, if you're under 16, you don't need a fishing license. And this kid was fishing out of the, and catching white perch in this hole where I have been stumped time after time. So he's a better fisherman than me. So here's another one of my favorite places on earth. This is just a half a mile from my home. And here's my little honey and me on Harness Creek. This is Quiet Waters Park. And I've always been curious about the name of Harness Creek. And according to the Anne Arundel County website, it's named after a guy named William Harness, who patented the acreage of the park side of the creek in 1652. So he must have been one of the original folks who came up from Virginia to settle Providence, one of the original English settlers here. Eventually it became a farm that was owned by different families over the centuries. And since this article was published, I discovered through my friend Jane McWilliams, you know Jane, she authored the definitive history of Annapolis, the city on the Severn, and that there used to be a modest caretaker's house near where the visitor center is now. And this was the home of a guy named Truxton Beale. And he was a prominent local retired diplomat. He was actually the diplomat of Persia. And he donated the land to the city of Annapolis in 1931 that became Truxton Park. So this was his country house where he died in 1936. His townhouse was in Washington, D.C. It's the Decatur House. So that's how small this world is. Quiet Waters is one of the crown jewels of the county's park system, and with more than 5 miles of paved trails for walking, jogging, biking. Here it is. And here you notice the red lines are the actual 5 miles of paved trail. But what I'm more interested in is the miles and miles of unpaved trail, which are this dotted line. If you go the second or third pavilion up the main entry road, and you go along the paved path, you'll see a little off ramp into the woods of dirt trail. And this follows the headwaters of Harness Creek all the way down where it opens up and onto a high bluff overlooking the mouth of the creek. And then you can cut across one of the paved trails. This is where the kayak rental place is, and go even further on this beautiful trek along this little cove, and then even further all the way out to the end of the South River. And on one of those days in the middle of winter, when you've got those extremely low blowout tides, you can actually walk along the shoreline. The water is so low, and that is an astonishing experience in itself. When you visit, you'll see what the archaeologists refer to as oyster middens. And when I was talking about people who have lived here for thousands of years, this is an indication of where one of those spots was. This is 30 feet up above the actual edge of the water. And you'll see oyster shells. And these are the remains of hundreds and thousands of years of people living here and having huge oyster feasts and throwing the oyster shells over their shoulders into a big pile. And again, it's a beautiful place on the bluff overlooking the river. I'd love to camp there and have an oyster feast today. It's just a beautiful sight. So when you see these remnants, just think of the people who have trodden here thousands and thousands of years before we were here. So here is my honey, the red dog with a red bud tree. And this is the last picture I ever took of her. Now, I'm going to get on my soapbox for a minute. I hope I'm not taking up too much time. This is the beautiful cove at the mouth of Harness Creek, and the county has an idea to create a rowing center here that would be wonderful for the rowing community, and I want to support the rowing community in Anne Arundel County. I think people should have dedicated sports activities. I'm never going to play tennis. I'm never going to play baseball. I'm never going to play golf, but I'm happy that there are those facilities here for people to enjoy. And I think we need a boating center dedicated to our rowing clubs, but not here. Where? It should be Discovery Village. Here is a pristine place that the rowing club can move into tomorrow without spending a dime, without cutting down a single tree, and without destroying a single strand of underwater grasses. It's got a brand new boat ramp that's totally underutilized, a floating dock, a fixed pier, a place for chase boats. This is where the Chesapeake Bay Foundation has its Oyster Recovery Partnership program here. There's acres of open grass where you can have festivals and meets and activities. There's parking for hundreds of cars. There's even a dedicated kayak launch over here. The place is totally underutilized and it can be open tomorrow. And what's better is that it's right here at the mouth of the West River, where there are places in the West River and in the Road River that are wide open, totally protected, and totally without powerboat wake, not like the South River. So I think it should be thought of as an alternative site that can be used tomorrow without any cost to taxpayers. Anyway, I'm off my loop. Brian, how are we doing for time?
If you want to wrap this up in about 5 minutes, and then we can do a short Q&A. I've got 3 or 4 questions right now that have come in on the chat.
I'll run through this pretty quickly. This is up in Arnold. This is off of Forker Creek, which is a tributary to the McAtee River. It's what I call a pocket wilderness tucked into between suburban developments in Arnold. And it's up behind Broadneck Elementary School, and it covers one of the watershed tributaries to the McAtee River. And so this is about this time last spring, hiking through, and there were thousands of acres and acres of fiddlehead ferns just about to pop. And these can be delicious and can make a great tea as well. There's my honey and me. I wanted to mention Corcoran Woods, which is a 230-acre site right next to Quietwater's, Sandy Point State Park. And I mentioned this because it was analyzed by one of the heroes of the Severn River Association, Colby Rucker, who was a legendary naturalist, historian, environmentalist, and tree expert. And to my surprise, I learned that Rucker was a lifelong resident of Pines on the Severn. He died there in 2004 at the age of 67, but he wrote 2 authoritative guides to the natural history of the Severn River, Scenic Rivers, the Severn in 1983, and along with Todd Davidson, The Gems of the Severn in 1988. So believe it or not, Rucker realized that there were some of the tallest trees on the East Coast in this one site. And I wouldn't recommend it right now because that's what it looks like this time of year. So I'm winding up at Greenberry Point at the end of the peninsula. This was once owned by, again, another one of those early English settlers, Colonel Nicholas Greenberry, and he was B-E-R-R-Y. And I don't know why it became B-U-R-Y, but it's curious. So his tombstone was moved in 1925 to St. Anne's Churchyard, where you can see it today. So the trail took us around Carrs Creek, and you need to check the Facebook page or the website to see if the rifle range on the other side of the creek is inactive. If not, if it is, you can't use the trail. You wouldn't want to anyway, but curiously, the far side of this was once the birth of the Naval Air Station. This was where Navy aviation was born. You wouldn't know it today. But here we are looking out at the end of Greenberry Point over the overlooking the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. You can see a panoramic view from the Bay Bridge all the way down to Thomas Point Light. It's just astonishing. So here we are. Wanted to share with you a song about not walking just about Anne Arundel County, but all around the state. So this is what I hope will become the next state song. That's my Maryland. I want to climb up to the mountaintop where eagles fly above the rocks and ramble with you hand in hand. That's my Maryland.
I want to cheer as my own home team scores while the Orioles and Ravens soar above the pride of Baltimore. That's my Maryland.
Oh, Maryland, my Maryland, from mountains to the sea. Susquehanna flowing down to meet the Chesapeake. Harbor in Annapolis with schooners running free. Oh, Maryland, my Maryland, that's Maryland to me. I want to catch a blue crab in my net as ospreys circle overhead while paddling upon a quiet creek. I want to hear the geese a-swarming o'er the marshes of the eastern shore and see the skipjack sail the Chesapeake. Maryland, my Maryland, from mountains to the sea. Potomac River flowing down to meet the Chesapeake. People from all over join to keep the free state free. Oh, Maryland, my Maryland, that's Maryland to me. Want to see the seagulls dance a jig along the shores of vast Atlantic and build a little castle in the sand. I want to count my many blessings in the land of pleasant living. That's my Maryland. That's my Maryland. So you can see all of this. This is on YouTube. That's my Maryland too. And then you can see all of the columns that I've written if you log on to the Capitol website and just search for Holland. All of the sites will pop up.
All right. Can we get a virtual round of applause from everyone? That was amazing, Jeff. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Very nice, Jeff. Thank you.
That sounded like. Go ahead.
So I have a few questions to share with you, Jeff. Kathy, sorry, now they're scrolling on me, so I did write something. Can you share about the trails behind Annapolis High School and explain how to access them? Are you familiar with those? And that was one of the questions from Jan.
Yeah, that would have been my 11th top 10. That's Broad Creek Park, and it's accessible from two sites. One, the kind of behind the athletic fields at Annapolis High School, and then also from the county offices off of Harry S. Truman Boulevard. And so that actually winds quite a bit back there. And again, if you look up Broad Creek is one of the articles that I wrote, and you can find that on the Capitol website.
Okay, great. Another question was from Jenny. Do you know anything about the old foundations of buildings on the Severn Run Trail?
Yes, actually, if you look in Colby Rucker's book, Gems of the Severn, you will find information on that very topic. There are some that are really old and some that are not quite so old, but you can look that up in Gems on the Severn. And Tom Gay can get you a copy of that book.
All right, and Elvia wanted to know if you know which Native Americans lived around this area back in the day.
Well, curiously, when John Smith sailed by 400 years ago, he met a number of peoples in various rivers, and he generally named the river on his map after the people he met there. And if you notice, at that time in the early 1608, 1609, that while they have the surrounding rivers are called Patuxent and Potomac and other Nanticoke and um, let's see, Potomac, Patuxent, Patapsco. Those were those are rivers that are named after the people that John Smith met living there. You notice that the other rivers in Anne Arundel County, South River, Road River, West River, the Severn River, do not have Indian names. And partly because John Smith pretty much bypassed these rivers in his voyages of discovery. But other part was that there weren't any people living here in that time. This was a no man's land between the Susquehannocks, the warlike Susquehannock River people up in the Pennsylvania area, and the Powhatans to the west. So there would be roving war parties and roving hunting parties through here, but no people living here at the earliest settlement of the English people in Anne Arundel County. And so our rivers have English names. So going back into history, that 3,000, 6,000 years, we don't know who those people were. They probably evolved into the people who John Smith found, but we just don't know. And that's what's is so fascinating about the work that the county archaeologists are doing. I would like to, if we have a moment, talk about our local river names. First of all, it's odd that the West River is south of the South River and the South River is on the western shore of the East River, where the West River is over to the eastern shore. No, wait, I get confused. Magathie, it turns out, could be an Algonquian word meaning a flat place along the shoreline, but most likely it goes to the English name Magatee, which at that time meant flighty or inane. And so if you were stupid enough to live on the Magathie River with all the mosquitoes, you were Magatee. And then the Road River, R-H-O-D-E, the road is the anchor line between the bow of the ship and the anchor. And I believe that that was named Road River. If you look at the geography of the Road River, it's the perfect place to anchor while you're waiting for the weather to turn. It's so protected and it's fairly deep water, especially for the ships that were carrying tobacco from here back to England in the early colonial times. And those ships wouldn't have left here to go across the ocean alone because there were Spanish pirates and there were French pirates and there were other ways that they could get into trouble. So they would gather up together in a big fleet so they would protect each other on their voyage across the Atlantic. So where would you gather when everybody got their holds full of hogsheads of tobacco? I'll wait for you at the Road River and I'll anchor out there until we all show up and then we'll all head down the Chesapeake Bay and across the ocean together. So I believe that's why the Road River is called the Road River.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. One more question. People were asking about more information on how to sponsor, be an official pet walker with the SPCA. I assume they just need to reach out to them, or do you have any more info that you can share to point people on how they can be as cool as you are and be the Pied Piper of dogs?
They're always looking for, oh, wait, there's my new puppy. That's Millie. It's Millicent. We just adopted her 3 weeks ago, and she is a gem. We got her from another organization called Paws for Homes Incorporated, and she was they rescue dogs from high kill kennels in the southern states. So we believe she was from Mississippi, and she has this kind of plaintive southern kind of whine when we put her in her cage. But she's a gorgeous. So the SPCA is always looking for volunteers, and they're always looking for dog walkers. So contact the SPCA. They are not. You can't just walk in. You have to make an appointment. But it's at 1813 Bay Ridge Avenue in Eastport, and you will have such a joy working with them and their dogs.